All right, what is up, Utes fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and the granddaddy of them all is coming up right around the corner. The Rose Bowl is here. Sorry it is taking me so long to make this video, but I do want to let you guys know I put a lot of time into this one. I did a lot of research. I made some, fun graphics and stuff for us to take a look at. So it should be a ton of fun. If you guys appreciate this video, please do drop it a like. It'll help get it out to more Utes fans and help get it out to more people interested in the game. And even if you're not a Utah fan, I think you'll have a lot of information in here that you'll appreciate, whether you're a Penn State fan, Utah fan, or you're just a college football fan. There's going to be a lot in here, a lot of data. And if that's your sort of thing, then I hope you enjoy this video and, do me that by liking it, right? So also on top of that is comment down below in the chat. I want to hear what you guys are thinking. Are there players that I'm discounting? Are there players that I'm over counting, maybe, that I think are better than they are, that I think they're worse than they are? Do you guys agree with what I'm thinking, how this game will go? Whatever you guys want to say. And also, if you guys are a big Utah football fan, subscribe to the channel. That's what I talk about all the time. There's no basketball, no baseball. We talk Utah football 24/7, 365. That's what we do here. So this should be a ton of fun, guys. We're going to talk about a bunch of numbers, a bunch of stats, a bunch of different players. If you are interested in the Rose Bowl and want to get the best possible breakdown, I hope that I do a good job of making this video that for you guys. So on that note, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, and we're going to talk about a lot of things today. So we'll do a full breakdown of the game. I think this should give you guys all the information you'd possibly want, and we're going to get pretty detailed. So the first thing, we'll just kind of talk about what's on the line for both teams. That'll be right after this. We'll talk about like what this means for both teams, because honestly, there's a lot riding on this game for both teams, and I don't think there's like a. It's not like you really care whether or not you get the Rose Bowl trophy, but winning this Rose Bowl would be big for both teams for a lot of reasons, and I'll break that down. The next category is going to be PFF grades and stats. And this is where we're going to spend most of the video diving in, talking about numbers, talking about PFF grades, talking about players that are not playing in this game. There's going to be a lot there, so we'll dive into that as well. And that'll be a huge part of the video. The next thing we'll talk about is, after we look at these PFF grades and look at these stats, what are going to be the keys to victory for both teams? We'll talk about it for Utah, and we'll talk about it for Penn State. So if you're a fan of either team, I think you'll appreciate those sections a lot. And on that note, let's start with what's on the line for both teams. Okay, and there's a lot on the line for Utah and for Penn State, like I mentioned earlier. But before I dive into all that, I do just want to say what the Rose Bowl is and why it's important. I think a lot of people discount bowl games, and for sure, general bowl games and even New Year's Six games don't all have the value they used to have. But let's make sure that we're all on the same page on what the Rose Bowl is, right? This is the next biggest game. Maybe there's one or two other games you could debate, but really the Rose Bowl is the next best game if you do not get into the college football playoff. This is the one. That's why it's called the granddaddy of them all. It is a big deal. So winning it means, not 100%, 100% sure, but it means you're basically the next best team that didn't get into the college football playoff. So just making sure everyone understands that. So for Utah, what does this game mean? The first thing is, this means that the best in the Pac 12 can hang with the best in the Big Ten. Obviously, Utah 48-45, heartbreaker loss last year against Ohio State. So we showed we can do it, but there's the caveat with the Ohio State game. I think a lot of people talk about this. So, one, their offense scored at will on us. We scored at will on their defense, but they also had a lot of opt-outs in that game, right? We had a pretty full team, and they had a lot of opt-outs when Ohio State beat us. I would say that the opt-outs may not have changed that much for Ohio State, but is what it is. I think they're still, we have something to prove here. We have to show the, and not to mention USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten. I mean, this is important for the Pac-12, us being able to beat Penn State, because Don't forget, guys, the reason Penn State is in this game is the best team from the Pac-12 and the best team from the Big Ten. But that's not exactly how this worked out this time because Ohio State and Michigan both made the college football playoff, which means we're playing the third best team in the Big Ten. Now, Penn State is a very good team. That's not a shot at them, but it is a big deal that we win this game. We're the best team from the Pac-12. We should absolutely beat the third best team from the Big Ten. And then for Penn State, a big part of this is establishing the fact that Penn State is in that very next tier outside of the top four teams that go to the college football playoff. They are that next group. They are just as good as anybody else. And I think that's definitely a real thing. Penn State is always a top 10, top 15 team, very good team. And the other thing is the statement about the Big Ten talent level. Like I mentioned a second ago, this is the third best team in the Big Ten playing the number one team in the Pac 12. So if they are able to pull this off, it is a really big deal for people that are, Big Ten fans. Like Ohio State, Michigan probably want Penn State to win this game, right? It's a really good look for them. So that's kind of what's on the line for both teams. But the number one thing that's going to be obvious for both teams is recruiting. What this does heading into the offseason, right? You win the Rose Bowl. Like I said, that's the next best bowl outside of the CFP games. And that means basically the only teams that had a better season than you, kind of, are the teams that were in the CFP. And arguably, if teams get embarrassed in the CFP and you have the Rose Bowl win, that's even better than getting to the CFP. So that's kind of what's on the line for both teams. And let's go ahead and dive into the PFF grades and stats. This should be a lot of fun. All right, and we're going to break down each position group versus the opponent's position group. This is probably going to be one of the more detailed breakdowns we've ever done on this channel, and I really hope you guys appreciate it. We'll talk about the O line versus the D line for each team. So we'll talk about Penn State's O line versus Utah's D line. We'll talk about Utah's O line versus Penn State's D line. We'll also talk about the quarterback and wide receivers for each team versus the DBs for the opposing team. And then we'll talk about the linebackers versus the tight end and running back for each team. So we'll do a very detailed breakdown. I think you guys will like this a lot. If you guys are appreciating the video so far and you're excited for it, just a quick reminder, please make sure you guys like the video and comment down below as we go through these position groups, guys. I'm excited to hear what you guys think, if you agree with me on a lot of these. But, no further ado, let's go ahead and start breaking it down. All right, and here is the first little grouping. We have the Utah offensive line versus the Penn State defensive line. So, how this is reading at the top here, we've got the tackles for Utah. Then, right under that, we've got the guards for Utah. Right under that, we have the centers for Utah. Then we have the interior defensive linemen for Penn State. And then right under that, we've got the edge rushers. Now, the premier matchup right off the bat that you guys might already be looking at is going to be Braden Daniels, the Utah left tackle, versus Chop Robinson, the edge rusher for Penn State. Now, you take a look at this here. Chop Robinson has a 91.6 PFF pass rush grade. That is elite. That is scary good. Now, the good news is that Braden Daniels has a 79.9 pass block grade, which is bordering on that elite area as well. Now, obviously, Chop Robinson has a bit of an advantage there in both the pass block or run defense and pass rush. So the big question here is not, can Braden Daniels shut him down? I think that'd be pretty wild of us to expect Braden Daniels to do that, just looking at the numbers here. But can Braden Daniels slow him down and win a decent amount of the one-on-one matchups? This guy's a monster. This Chop Robinson guy. I wasn't that familiar with him before the game, but he brings the heat and he is looking to cause freaking problems, bro. I believe that he had 40 pressures. So if you look down here, we'll break these down in a second, but total pressures by Penn State, this is the whole team together, is 268, and Chop Robinson had 40 of those. That is really impressive. You know what I mean? That is really good. This guy is a game breaker. He is a game changer. And having Braden Daniels do a decent job against him and just, hold his own, which is going to be great for Braden Daniels' draft stock. And I'm sure a lot of people are watching this matchup. This is a really good offensive tackle against a really good edge rusher. So hopefully Braden Daniels can win that matchup. The other thing is, on the other side, we got Satella Lomea. Now, he's not exactly the best pass blocker, right? A 56.2. That's not a very good grade. Overall, his grade's about average. And I will give him credit in the fact that at the beginning of the season, that grade was much lower than it is now. He was, I believe there was a time where he was in the 40s. So he's played a much better second half of the season than he has a first. So this 56.2 pass block grade could be slightly lower than it really is considering his second half of the year. And when we look at that, the reason I bring that up is Amin Vanover. Now, the guy is not one of their primary edge rushers, right? He's not going to be a guy you see every down, but I'm guessing he's a situational third and long pass rush guy from what I'm seeing here. 83.7 pass rush grade, so elite pass rush grade. He can also cover. It's pretty impressive. But he's a guy that if he gets in there, like I said, it's not a giant sample size, but it's good enough. I mean, this guy's coming in to rush the passer. He's very good. So Satala Lomea holding his own against that. The good news is on the inside for the Utah fans, we've got Keaton Bills. Keaton Bills is a beast. You look at his grade here, pass block and run block. He should be able to do more than enough to handle these interior defenders. And the great thing about that is even Michael Mokafisi, who hasn't exactly done fantastic this year, I would say, kind of a bad grade in a 55 can still hold his own against these other two interior defenders in number 91 and 97 in Mustafa and Ellis for Penn State. So he should do a decent job. And then we could probably put Keaton Bills or probably Michael Mogafisi isn't the guy you want one-on-one. You probably want Paul Miley and Keaton Bills one-on-one. But that means we can use a Michael Mokafisi or whoever, because these other interior defenders aren't great, to do some double teams if we have to. That's just a good sign that we're not going to be desperate in the interior to where we're going to have to do one-on-ones with our tackles. Now, they do like to blitz their linebackers as well. So that does need to be taken into account. They have some good pass rushing linebackers. We'll take a look at them in a minute. But at least when it comes to defensive linemen versus our offensive linemen and their edge rushers, we should do a pretty decent job. Now let's take a look at this. These are two good groups for both teams. So you take a look at Utah's offensive line total pressures allowed is 84. That's very low. So only about 6.5 pressures per game. That's one of the better teams in college football for pressures allowed. And then Utah has only allowed 9 sacks. I've heard the number 8 floated out there a lot, but I saw 9. So not sure what that's about. That means that's less than 1 a game. So most games, Cam Rising does not get sacked. To be fair, that a lot of that has more to do with Cam Rising's ability to get out of the pocket and make plays. But we look over here, guys. Penn State has a monster team when it comes to pressuring the quarterback. Like I said, they'll send linebackers too. They like to get back there and make quarterbacks have a bad day because they have really good DBs. We'll look at them too, and they take advantage of that. So Penn State total pressures 268. That's 22 per game. So look how drastically different these numbers are. They're getting 22 pressures per game. We're only allowing 6.5. So take that somewhere in the middle. Maybe they get, 10 to 13. I think that'll be a decent number for Utah. You don't love the idea of the quarterback getting that much pressure back there, but if we could keep them around, 10, 11, I think that'll be manageable for our offense. They also get about 3.0 sacks a game. We we only allow less than 1 sack a game. So I see that with Cam Rising, on top of the fact that we don't allow a ton of pressure and the fact that Cam Rising gets out of the pocket, I'd say that's going to be like maybe 1, maybe 2 sacks on Cam Rising. Who knows? But that's what the numbers are telling me. So that is Utah's offensive line versus Penn State's defensive line. Okay, now let's look at Utah's quarterback and wide receivers versus the Penn State defensive backs. This is two good groups, right? Obviously, Penn State, this is one of their shining spots. I think you guys will notice as we go through this, Penn State has a very, very good defense. I think that's their best quality is how good this defense is. So Cam Rising, a very good quarterback, 79.0 grade, 73.2 pass grade, 76.8 running grade. And then we have a good slew of receivers as well. We got Jalen Dixon out here with a 72.7 offensive grade, and it's not on a tiny number of snaps, right? 254. I mean, that's enough to feel somewhat established with that. And then we got Devon Vele at a 69.5, and that's over 749 snaps, which is a very established number. And just so guys know the snap numbers here if you're not seeing that. And then Money Parks. So Money Parks is a 64.8 grade, but let me tell you, that guy came on towards the end of the season, and I would say that grade might be a little artificially low considering how good he did at the end of the year. Now, outside of them, you'd like a little more. Solomon Enos will see the field. He's a very good run blocker. I know that seems weird that a receiver seeing the field because he's a good run blocker, but he is, and he does a good job out there in space. And I think it throws, DBs off sometimes and makes them like, damn, this is a physical team. And it can kind of set the tone. Now, when we look at the corners, so this is the cornerback group right here, starting with Kalen King. Now, Kalen King is probably one of the better cornerbacks in college football, 87.3 grade. That's elite, elite, elite. Coverage grade at 90.1, just a straight monster. This guy's a beast. Now, Joey Porter Jr., you'll see this red line here. Joey Porter Jr. will not be playing in this game. And when we look at this, Joey Porter Jr. is their number one corner, which means that Kalen King is usually covering the number 2 receiver. I would still say Kalen King's grade is so good over almost 500 snaps, and some of those snaps are going to be against number 1 receivers that we're going to want to avoid that guy. I think he will. If we target him, it could be a bad time, right? We don't want to be forcing stuff in his direction. Now, the bright spot of this, though, is that Johnny Dixon, how funny is that? We got Jalen Dixon, they got Johnny Dixon. I think there's a good chance those two will be covering each other at some points during the game. But Johnny Dixon, 71.1. Now, when we look at that, I'm guessing this guy's more of a slot corner, right? They had their 2 best corners. Joey Porter's gone. Now Johnny Dixon is going to have to line up on the outside, which he has a good grade. This is a good grade, 71.7. But how is he going to do when he has to go one-on-one with the number 2 receiver on the outside, which is a whole different way to cover than it is from the slot? So I think that could be a matchup we could look to expose. But the big one is this Marquise Wilson guy, right? 254 snaps, and you got to imagine a lot of those are against the team's number 4 wide receiver once your team gets up. So if we can get this guy's probably playing the slot, maybe even playing the outside with Johnny Dixon still in the slot. I don't have a confirmation on that, but I'd say somewhere between these two, there's going to be a matchup that we could take advantage of, right? I'm guessing one of them will step up and look pretty good, but I'd be shocked if both of them have to play a full-time role. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to mask this and put a lot of, not do a lot of 3 cornerback sets. But if we force them to, we force them to. So I would keep an eye on that, see how we match up with that. I mean, I think we have a good group. I think they'll be able to neutralize our number 1, which will probably be Vele. But then when we have 4 wide receivers out there, I can see them struggling with that. They don't have their normal 4 corner. And even with 3 wide receivers, I wouldn't be shocked to see us, work these guys. But I would say this is not going to be the best matchup we have in this game. Our receivers could struggle a little against a good DB group here. And then it gets even better with the safeties. So Jair Brown is a really good pass rusher, good coverage, and don't pick on him in coverage. But his thing is pass rushing. Like I said earlier, part of what our offensive line is going to have to do in this game is adapting, reading the looks, and being able to adjust quickly on the fly. Because if we sit there and just hope it works out and try to win, it's going to, Cam Rides is going to have to read, and our offensive line is going to have to do a good job of reacting post snap when the look actually gets shown, because they're hiding they're doing a good job of sending people and disguising what they're doing. And then Zakee Wheatley, not quite as good, not very good in coverage, but a good run defender. And they have a couple other safeties that actually have a lot of reps. And Zakee Wheatley is actually like the guy with the fourth most reps. So this Jalen Reed is actually their other safety from what I'm seeing here. And he's mainly a pass rusher, average run defense. So this guy at a 58.3 coverage grade, if we catch him one on one with tight ends or receivers, wouldn't be surprised to see us take some shots his direction. Now, let's look at overall the numbers for both of these units. So the Penn State passing yards allowed, 2,553 throughout the season. That's 212.8 per game. Pretty good there. Touchdowns allowed is really low through the air. This is a really good. So in the red zone, they don't allow many touchdowns through the air. 10 total. That's less than one a game. And for our team, our passing yards per game is 3,282 is our total passing yards. And then per game, that's going to be 252.5 per game. So we're a pretty good passing team, not up that elite level passing, but I'd say you take out a few bad games, and we've had some good games through the air against some good teams. When Cam Rising's on, he's on. And then Utah passing yards or passing TDs is 29, which means we get 2.23 a game. So you got to think when you look at these numbers, we're probably going to get at least one passing touchdown. And I think getting two would be a big deal, right? To kind of set the tone, open up the run a little bit. We'll talk more about that later. But I think the number one question before I move on is going to be, Cam Rising. There's good games and bad games in that passing grade. And him showing up and getting it done and being that gamer, we all know will go a long ways to Utah winning this football game. All right, now we're going to be looking at Utah's tight end and running backs versus the Penn State linebacking core. So, first off, our running back with the most carries on the year is Mekhi Bernard. A good grade of a 72.3 and an 80.7 run grade. That's very solid, and a decent receiving grade of a 61.8. He's a good dual threat back that can really run the ball when he needs to. Tavion Thomas will not be playing in this game, but I think that his PFF grade's a little misleading. There's a few really good games in there, but outside of that, he wasn't exactly stellar this year. A good back, and I wish him the best, but there were some off the field problems, and I think I've heard a lot of media people talking about how we're gonna really miss Tavion in this game. I don't think that's the case. I think we'll be just fine without him. We also have Jalen Glover grading out really well in the year, and a really good pass block grade. If they start bringing pressure, I wouldn't be shocked to see us, put him out there, let him pass block a little. But the main guy is Jaquindon Jackson. Now, you look over here and see that he's only played 117 snaps. That might make you discount him. But that grade is real, man. And maybe it's slightly inflated, but that 90.8 grade, like best running back in college football type of grade, or right up there, top 5, top 10, is real, dude. I doubted this guy when he came in at running back, but he has blown me away. A 90.4 running grade, 79.9 pass block, and even a 66.8 run block. The guy is a monster. If you are a Penn State fan, know that this guy is going to be a problem. I think he's going to have a big day, and I think he's going to match up really well against this defense. He's going to run the ball hard. He's explosive. He's a beast. The next thing to look at for Utah is going to be the tight end group. I think obviously we lost. You can see the red line here. Dalton Kincaid will not be in this game. He is in my opinion, the best tight end in college football. 91.8 receiving grade, 89.9 overall grade. But the thing is, I think people are acting like we don't still have a super good tight end room. I mean, you look at Thomas Yasmin, who's really stepped up over the past couple games. His run block was one of his sore spots over the season, but towards the end of the season, it started going up, and now it's a serviceable run block grade, and his receiving is really good. I think the reason that receiving grade is not higher is his route running. Once this guy has the ball in his hands, he's a freaking monster, bro. If you guys are Penn State fans, and you're not familiar with who this guy is, go check him out. Go watch the highlights from the Utah games. I'd say Feels like every other week at least he's busting off a 40, 50 plus yard catch. And he's not getting wide open and running it for a touchdown. He's running through people. This guy's an Australian rugby player turned tight end, and he is mean and nasty, dude. He is he is going to be a problem. Do not think that our tight end room is not still very good. Thomas Yasmin is very good and a very good player. Now, Logan Kendall brings a different dynamic to the game. He has been a starter as a run blocking tight end, an inline tight end, basically all season. He's a very good run blocker, good pass blocker, mean. I mean, if you guys are Utah fans, you know this is the Rhino. This is the guy. Me knows he's been on this channel. I've done an interview with him. Really nice guy and just mean, dude. Runs people into the ground, and I think he's going to give him some problems. Now, this is where I really like the matchup. So, earlier we looked at Utah's offensive line versus the defensive line for Penn State. And I think where Penn State has the advantage is in their ability to pass rush, right? It's going to be like, I don't think they're going to overwhelm us, but it's going to be something we're going to have to do well if we want to, throw the ball. Now, this is where we have an advantage. Where I think we'll run block very well against them. I think we'll do a good job. I mean, you look, especially at their linebacking core, if we can get second level, Abdul Carter's a very good run defender. But if we can spotlight him, then Jonathan Sutherland is above average against the run, but the rest of them are either below average, like this Curtis Jacobs. And then this guy, Tyler Eldson, is real bad against the run. And then this guy's bad against the run. So I would say us being able to run the ball is looking pretty dang good. I think a lot of people think that's not going to be the case. The numbers are telling me something else. The numbers are telling me we are going to be able to run. It is odd considering, I mean, when you look at the numbers here, Penn State rush yards allowed is 1,261, which is 105.1 per game. And Penn State rush TDs allowed is 13, which is 1.08 per game. Tough to figure out why that is because they seem like they're a little susceptible to the run. And don't hear what I'm not saying. Penn State's a very good team. I'm just saying they seem like they could be a little susceptible to the run. I mean, they've allowed more rush TDs than they have pass TDs. That seems, unique. Over one rushing touchdown a game. And I know Penn State fans are going to go into the comments and say, "Oh, it was all the Michigan game." Well, Michigan was one of the only good teams you guys played all year. Like, you have to count that. It's like, yeah, we have to count the Oregon game. We have to count the USC game where they were lighting us up. Like, you don't think we don't want to count those? Both those were 350 plus passing yard games. You have to count the bad games and the good games. I mean, when you look at the rest of the schedule you guys played, it wasn't exactly stacked. And I'm not a hater on Penn State, but when people act like that's justifiable, that doesn't matter. It's like, no, dude, we're a good run team too. I don't think we're that far behind Michigan when it comes to running the ball. We've been doing it for years and years and years, man. We're a tough, hard-nosed team. So if Michigan get 400 on you, I wouldn't be shocked if we got 300. And that's being a little cute, but I'm being real. So Utah rushing yards, you look at it down there, 2,863 on the season. That's 220.2 per game. Utah rushing TDs, that's 37. That's 2.84 per game. So you see why this is going to be a big part of the matchup, right? It's gonna be a big thing for both teams. Establishing the run on both sides is gonna be a big deal. Now, I wouldn't be shocked to see Curtis Jacobs, be lined up with Thomas Yasmin, or maybe one of the safeties, but working in Yasmin is going to be important. We'll talk more about that later. But that is Utah's running backs versus the and tight ends versus the linebackers for Penn State. All right, now we're going to go ahead and look at Penn State's offensive line versus Utah's defensive line. But before I do that, I just do want to remind you guys, if you're appreciating the video, I think nobody really dives deeper into Utah football than I do, and I really try to make this a fun experience that you guys can't get anywhere else. If you guys are appreciating it and you haven't already, please do like the video. And if you're a Penn State fan and you weren't happy about how I ragged about the Michigan game, comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're a Utah fan and you're enjoying it, or you're a Penn State fan and you're enjoying this, make sure you guys comment down below. And Utah fans, subscribe to the channel. But now let's talk about the Penn State O-line versus Utah D-line. So the first thing to look at is this question mark I put up here. Olumuyiwa Bashanu is by far is their best offensive lineman. 84.7 pass block grade, 71 overall grade. He's a very good player. Now, everything I've read said there is no announcement of whether or not this guy is playing in the game. Not having him would be big for Penn State. Look at their next best tackle, dude. That means you're not only starting one tackle that's a 63, you're going to be starting another guy that's lower than him that would be a 59. So I'm feeling like there's a good chance Fashanu is not going to play. So if he doesn't play, this is going to be a nightmare matchup for Penn State. I mean, Utah is a good D line, man, and they could go back there and be eaten pretty well if if this guy if Fashan is not playing. But even if he is, which I'd say, I'm gonna count it 50-50, but even if he is playing, we've got a lot of great matchups here. I mean, you look at Samodi Peppa for Utah, a extremely good pass rusher, right? At 81.5, or I mean, an extremely good run defender, 81.5 run defense. I mean, you put the center on him, and the center is not going to be able to run block Samodi Pep all day by himself. And then you're going to have to put someone else on him. And then we'll have the two edge rushers on the outside, both very good run defenders. And then, Gabe Reed's a good pass rusher as well. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if Fashanu is out, to see us get back there. I mean, look at the blocking grades for the two tackles. And just so you guys understand, we're looking at tackles at the top, guards in the middle, center right here, and then D tackle defensive interior for Utah right there, and then edge rushers right there for Utah. So even Utah's like rotational edge rushers look like they'll have a advantage over some of the offensive linemen for Penn State. So we take a look down here, guys, where it says total sacks, total pressures. Utah total sacks is 38. That's almost 3 a game. And then total pressures is 252, which is 19.38 per game. Now, Penn State sacks allowed is 18. That's fairly low. It's not elite numbers, but it's pretty good. That's 1.5 per game. And Penn State's pressured allowed is 111, so 9.25. So, Utah's at that 19.38. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that somewhere um pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised Utah gets back there and hurries them. If Fashanu's out, it's going to be a big deal for Utah and a big deal for Penn State. I would say if Fashanu's out, it is a problem for Penn State. And the other thing is everyone keeps talking about this Penn State run game, and we'll look at the running backs and everything later. They're very good, but how are you going to run the ball effectively if this is what the matchup looks like? This front seven for Utah is no joke, guys. If you're a Penn State fan, you're just learning about it. It is not going to be easy to run against this squad. And I really hope I don't see comments into this like, yeah, that's because of Michigan, or yeah, that's because of Ohio State. Bro, everybody played tough teams. We played the Heisman winner twice, and we still have these grades. Think about that. Okay, now this is the Penn State QB and wide receiver versus Utah DBs. Now this is the one of the most interesting matchups. If you look on the screen, guys, you'll see there's two red lines in this one. There's two players that will not be playing, and it is the best players in each respective category. So it makes things really interesting. So first, let's talk about Sean Clifford. So Sean Clifford is one of the most up and down players in college football. He's From what I understand with Penn State fans, I've learned a lot about him since I've been researching this, but he's best when you don't put the game on his back, right? If you can establish the run well and not put him in third and 7, third and long, whatever, he does a decent job. He's like look, his grade's not bad, but that grade has really high ends and really low ends. But that's with Sean Clifford, you're going to get solid play, but you don't want to put the game on his back, right? If you do, it could become a problem. And one of the tough things for him is he's going to be without Parker Washington, who's a really good receiver. We take a look here. He's a 76.4. He's only got about 660 or 600 receiving yards in the season, but still his grade is significantly higher than any of the other Penn State wide receivers, which this could become a problem for Sean Clifford when you look at the fact that he's going to be without his best guy, this guy who's got a 67.4 grade, and this guy who's got a 66.7 grade. Now, this other guy is Mitchell Tinsley. He's got 645 snaps. He's got like high 500 receiving yards, somewhere in the 500s. He's pretty good too. But I would also say this grade is mainly, you got to think, it's mainly against number two corners. So, how's he going to do against a better corner? Anyways, though, just moving on from that. Um, you got to feel good about that, right? They don't have their number one guy. When we look here, so Sione Vaki for the Utah corners, and just if you guys aren't familiar, Clark Phillips is probably going to be a first or second round draft pick at corner. Really good grade, one of the best players in college football this year. He's opting out of the game. Sione Vaki is more of a slot corner, but he is a beast. Really good run defender, really good coverage guy. I I wouldn't even be shocked if they rotated him to the outside and let him get some reps. I don't know if that's the plan, but I wouldn't be shocked. Now, Maya Vaughn has established himself as one of the better corners in, at least a very good corner in college football. 77.5 is a very good grade. And you got to love that 79 of that is in coverage, which is what you want at corner. He is very good. And he should be able to lock down one of these receivers. My guess would be Mitchell Tinsley. And then Travis Broughton could kind of be a weak link for Utah. A lot of you guys know I'm not the biggest Travis Broughton fan in the world. I've seen him get burned a lot. It happens. Um, kind of sucks, but it looks like he'll be out there as one of the three corners. My guess would be we're going to have Zamaya Vaughn as our number one, and then we'll have Travis Broughton as the number two, and we'll have Sione Vaki in the slot covering these Penn State wide receivers. The good thing is none of these Penn State wide receivers are super impressive, at least PFF grade wise. And I think we'll do fine against them. And then we got a really good group of safeties to cover over the top. Cole Bishop can get in there and rush the passer. He can defend the run very well. And he can cover, he's a good coverage safety nowadays, which is the knock on him last year, but he's really developed. RJ Hubert, not as versatile, but very good in coverage. Has another guy that's had some up and down games. So I feel very good about how well we'll do against the pass, right? If anything, Travis Broughton will let up a few plays here and there, but hopefully we can, lean RJ Hubert to his side a little bit just in case that happens. So either way, though, if you look at these matchups, guys, even if you're a Penn State fan, I don't see how you wouldn't think Utah has a big advantage in this part of the game. Penn State passing yards per game or passing yards total is 3,004. That's 250.3 per game. Again, they're without their number one receiver. Passing TDs is 27. That's 2.25 per game. Then Utah passing yards allowed by their defense is 2,838, 218 per game. And passing touchdowns allowed for Utah is 18, which is just a little over one per game at 1.38 per game. So this is for Penn State. This is going to be important. We'll talk a little more about it later, but that you can establish something with the pass. I'm not saying we're holding these guys to 50 passing yards. I'm just saying you're going to want to find some matchups here. And for Penn State, I would imagine that's going to be Travis Broughton. I'm not trying to help out Penn State, but I'm hoping they already have their game plan at this point. I wouldn't look Zamaya Vaughn or Sione Vaki's way, but I wouldn't be shocked if these DBs held these receivers to quite a low number of passing yards or receiving yards. Now, this is going to be the Penn State tight ends and running backs versus the Utah linebackers. So take a look here at the top. We got the tight ends for Penn State. Right under them, we have the running backs for Penn State. And right under that, we're going to have the linebackers for Utah. Now, we got some interesting matchups here. So first off, I mentioned it earlier. Everyone's talking about these Penn State running backs, right? They're both very talented running backs, high PFF grades, but more than anything, high rushing grades as well. I mean, these two can run the ball very well. I see them, making some plays for sure. I think I still feel confident, like I talked about before. Look at our linebackers, really well rounded. I mean, Lander and Diabate aren't great in coverage, but when it comes to defending the run and rushing the passer, all of our running backs are very good. And Karine Reed is actually good in coverage as well. He's a really versatile guy. Um, and what the reason I bring that up is it looks like our D line is going to have a big advantage over Penn State's offensive line, especially when it comes to running the ball. And with that, that means you're going to have to run on our linebackers. And yes, I do think we'll see one or a couple explosive plays. These are two very talented running backs. But to think that these running backs are just going to run through our defense, I just don't see that happening. I think we have a good front seven when it comes to running the ball. Yeah, at the beginning of the year we didn't, but we developed and the unit got stronger and they meshed and they look really good now. I don't see how that's going to happen, and I think a lot of people are talking about it, and I think it might be misguided. I could be out of my gourd, but I don't see them running the ball super well against us. Now, the next thing to look at is going to be a spot where the tight ends for Penn State might have a bit of a spot where they can shine. So, Brenton Strains and Theo Johnson, they both are, Theo Johnson, 68.6 grade, Brenton Strains, 71.4. Both have receiving grades in the 70s. Now, those are pretty good. Those are good receiving grades, right? These are not just, and this is over a lot of snaps, 446 and 584. I would not be shocked at all to see them work the tight ends a lot to help. We just looked at the DBs and the wide receiver matchups for these for Utah and Penn State, and those matchups didn't look in Penn State's favor in general. But this matchup does, right? We only have one very good coverage linebacker. I mean, we could bring a safety down and put him on a tight end in general, but I really wouldn't be surprised to see Penn State get these tight ends involved in the passing game. And if they can do that, that would loosen up our linebackers, loosen up our front seven a little bit, and give them more opportunities to run the ball. So that's kind of how I see that. But we take a look at the team. So Penn State rushing yards is 2,185. That's 182.1 per game. And Penn State rushing TDs, 25, 2.08 per game. Utah rushing yards allowed is 1391, 107 per game. Utah rushing TDs allowed 15, that's 1.15 per game. And if Penn State fans want to talk about Michigan, we can talk about UCLA. UCLA ran the ball at will, right? They destroyed us running the ball. That was so long ago though for Utah that we're a completely different team. And I feel great about our ability to defend the run nowadays. I mean, go look at how we played against Oregon. Yeah, it took us a little while to get going. I mean, that's probably a fair point to talk about. It might take us a little while. If you're going to have success running the ball against Utah, it'll probably be early. Offense and defense, sometimes we take a while to get the ball rolling. But once we get going and figure out what you're doing and adjust our game plan, we do a really good job of locking in and really slowing offenses down. So that's the Penn State tight ends and running backs versus the Utah linebackers. Just to recap, I'm not downgrading the ability of these two running backs. I think they're both very good. I just think anyone thinking we're just going to get ran on at will is probably a little misguided. And here we go, the fun part, guys. What do the two teams need to do to get a victory? We'll start with Utah. The keys to victory for Utah. The first one is going to be running the football. I put a picture of Jaquindon Jackson up there. He is a monster. He should get a good amount of carries in this game. He has really proven himself and can be a game changer. This team is really, really good at getting back there and causing pressure in QB's faces. The more you run the ball, the more that will loosen it up and just complement what you're trying to do. It'll just kind of, pound them into submission. I think we'll have a good game running the ball. We broke down all the grades. They'll do well at rushing the passer, but they might not do as well at actually, stopping when we want to run the ball. We have a lot of good matchups there. Now, the other thing is going to be solid O line play, right? That's going to come in the run game. I mean, this is a Big Ten front seven, one of the better defenses in college football. Very, very good defense. We need good play all around. We can't have blown assignments and mistakes. This O line has meshed a lot over the season, but just in general, we can't. When I say solid O line play, like I mentioned earlier, I don't expect Braden Daniels to shut down Chop Robinson, but I also don't expect him to get beat every play. He needs to have a good game. Keaton Bills needs to win his one-on-ones. Our leaders on the offensive line have to step up, and our and our offensive line in general just needs to do a decent job and do their assignment, do it soundly, and just overall not make a lot of mistakes that could be a problem. The other thing is Cam Rising. Cam Rising, you see the picture of him there, needs to go out there and have a game. He needs to be wham, bam, thank you, Cam, and not the Cam we saw against Oregon. He needs to be that guy. He needs to establish the tone. He needs to dominate. He needs to make plays when Utah needs him to make plays. Now, D line pressure. So Utah's D line needs to get back there, cause pressure, whether that's in the run game, whether that's in the pass rush game. They need to get back there, shake up this offensive line, make them nervous, make them make mistakes, and make sure they're off schedule. Putting them in situations where Sean Clifford has to win them the game is a good recipe for Utah. Sean Clifford doesn't suck, but I've seen him time and time again choke in pressure situations. And one of the other players I'm going to shout out individually is Thomas Yasmin. I mentioned him in the breakdown. This guy is very athletic, very talented. Him stepping in and doing a decent job at filling in Kincaid's shoes will go a long way in making Cam more comfortable and making this offense, progress as it should. Um, but yeah, Thomas Yasmin, just a solid game, maybe like 4 or 5 catches, 55 to 70 yards, like a good game would go a long way for this team. So those are the keys to victory that I see for Utah if they want to win this game. All right, now the keys to victory for Penn State. So, from what I watch with Penn State channels and Penn State media, that sort of thing, there's good Sean Clifford and there's bad Sean Clifford. Now, like I said, I think Utah needs to put the game on Sean Clifford's shoulders. I think that's a good recipe for Utah to win. But if you're a Penn State fan, you want good Sean Clifford to show up. So when a play needs to be made, you want Sean Clifford to make it. And that doesn't, when I say good Sean Clifford, I don't mean that he's going to be out there slinging the ball 350 yards. What I'm saying is just solid complementary football, mistake free, a good 65, low 60, 65% completion percentage, something decent, not making a lot of mistakes, not turning the ball over. You get that, it'll go a long way in helping open up the run, which I've made quite clear that I think Penn State will struggle a little against Utah from what I see. Now, decent offensive line play. I think, especially if that offensive tackle is out for Penn State, Utah's D line is going to give them some problems. Now, making sure Sean Clifford doesn't have to scramble around every play and that the running backs aren't met in the backfield every play is going to be very important. It's really similar to what I said for Utah, just decent O line play. Both these teams in Utah and Penn State are going up against very good defenses, and just showing up and playing solid offensive line play is going to go a long way. You don't have to shut them down or throw them around, but just sound gap assignment will go a long way. For Penn State, the other thing is wide receivers need to make plays. The matchup I showed you guys, the only good matchup for their wide receivers is going to be Travis Broughton. And even with him, I could see him having a decent day against some receivers that, aren't exactly superstars. I'm not saying they suck, but that they're not grading out super well, and some of them don't have a ton of snaps. So them stepping up and getting something going will go a long ways. The other thing is when they're throwing is the tight ends getting open and making plays after the catch. Those tight ends are good receivers. They both have a little over 300 yards in the year. And if they can work those tight ends into the passing game, it could cause some problems for Utah. That will spread out the front seven for Utah, and that'll give Penn State the opportunities to make plays in the run game, which will open up a lot for their offense, which would be very bad for Utah. And outside of that, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video a lot. I spent a lot of time, making this presentation and building this out. So if you haven't already, seriously, please do like the video. It goes a long way helping to get it out to more Utes fans and helping grow the channel. Also, comment below. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. I hope this wasn't too biased. I am a Utah fan, but I do feel like I called this one at least just a small lean to Utah. And then, also make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. After doing this whole breakdown, I do just want to comment what my prediction is I actually think Utah is going to win bigger than I thought. And I know it makes me seem even more like a Utah homer, but I think the numbers are telling me that. I think Utah is not going to be in a ton of situations where they have to throw the ball. And that's what Penn State stops most. And I think it's going to be a good game for Utah. 34-21 Utah. You might sound like a homer, but 34-21 Utah. I'm out of here, guys. Go Utes.